Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod. This is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So this story, Kickback by K. Arsenault Rivera, since we've been keeping track of this, most of it from a chronological perspective does not take place during the events of Return of the Jedi. And I actually did not bring this up yesterday when we were talking about the Boba Fett story Reputation. That story also mostly doesn't take place during Return of the Jedi. I mean, I think there's only like 2 of the 8 so far that take place significantly during the events of the movie. But anyway, Kickback is focused on some of the folks working for Jabba, some of his guards that were on that second skiff that was flying around at the battle over the Sarlacc pit. Although the story is a little bit confusing because there's a lot of talk about how they have to go after Luke Skywalker since all of the fighting has broken out from that point of the story. And they talk about having to get onto the skiff and get over to Luke, but we know that there are a bunch of guards that are flying around on a skiff, and from the movie there are only 2 of these little skiffs that are flying around, one that Luke's on and one that a bunch of guards are on. So that was a little bit confusing, and I ended up like paging back and forth to try and figure out, did I miss something or not understand something? But I'm pretty sure I got it right. Like, for some reason the story depicts it as they weren't even on there and they had to launch the skiff once the battle started. Now, the story focuses mostly on a guy named Sion, and this is now, I guess the second time in a year that we have Sion, S-I-O-N, as a name used in Star Wars. We have the Eye of Sion, which is that giant hyperspace ring we see in the Ahsoka series. And then, of course, there was a Darth Sion in Legends history. I don't think he's been made canon yet, but anyway, so yeah, Sion's popping a lot for some reason. And another guy who's named Aaron, E-R-R-I-N, who basically helped Sion out of a jam a decade ago, and things have been fantastic since he's been coming to work for Jabba. You know, most days are great days, but then sometimes like he goes home to his husband late because he's had to try and get all the blood out from under his fingernails and it takes too long to do so. And he doesn't want to bring the horror of the job home to his husband and kids. Yeah, you know, which makes perfect sense, obviously. So considering that Aaron has done so much for Sion over the years, when the battle breaks out, he decides that he wants to try and do Aaron a solid and keep him out of the action. But it's not really clear whether Aaron actually agrees to it. At one point, Aaron says no because Aaron's trying to strategize around how they attack Luke. They have to attack him as a group. They have to overwhelm him with numbers. They have to stomp out that lightsaber, shoot it out of his hand, do something basically, because that's like the major pain point of things. But it isn't clear whether Aaron actually ends up fighting or not. Now, we are in full spoiler territory for this, by the way, just to make it clear. So Sion, in seeing Luke Skywalker, says, hey, that guy actually looks familiar, and flashes back to 4 years prior to the scene in the special edition of A New Hope where Jabba shows up with Boba Fett and a bunch of other guards at Docking Bay 94 to roust Han and ask him where his money is. So Sion was part of that crew and saw Luke coming into the hangar and remarked that he seemed like, bright and naive and whatnot, and that, that wouldn't last forever. He'll either get, killed or, end up in service to the Empire, chopped up by the rebellion as cannon fodder. And there's a line about nothing that gold ever stayed, which is a nod to the Robert Frost poem, or Stay Gold Pony Boy if you want to just start calling Luke Skywalker Pony Boy just for your own amusement. Anyway, so that's kind of an interesting little nod to things. And then it turns out that if you've seen it, and I've posted it a time or two as well, the force kick gif that goes around every so often, where when Luke Skywalker is fighting on that skiff and he delivers a kick to one of Jabba's guards and the guard goes flying backward, but when you get to see it in slow motion, you see that the kick doesn't actually connect, and so people refer to it as a force kick. And then you see Boba Fett flying like the chump that he is in the background before he's about to slam into the side of the sail barge. So this is the story of the guy who was on the receiving end of Luke's force kick. And ultimately, this is kind of a sad story as well, because this is a guy who was going to get in trouble with Black Sun for stealing something, and this guy, Aaron, helped him out and got him a real job, and now he's raising a family and kids and trying to do right by them. Yes, although he's working for a crime lord, so there's that whole thing as well, but things don't end well for Aaron. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, this one for me, it didn't work as well. It definitely had some interesting moments and, well written, but confusing in its execution in a couple of places, and ultimately just kind of, made him, sad and disposable, unfortunately. And also, I'm not sure why it was called Kickback, because kickback suggests like a bribe of some kind, and, was the kickback that he was trying to, pay back Aaron for having rescued him a decade earlier, or was it a reference to the force kick that Luke delivered? I'm not sure, but yeah, that's what I've got for you about this story, and that's what I've got for you for the podcast today. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.